Trump slides in the polls, and House Speaker Paul Ryan says he won't be seen with him.
Did anybody see that debate last night?
Yeah, we saw it.
Your campaign and the way it's exploding.
She has tremendous hate in her heart.
The Republicans are leaving you.
It was ugly and revealing and may have paid off for Trump more than Democrats may have thought.
Donald Trump last night showed that he's a big man.
We'll score it and show how some voters in Tampa Bay want to vote but feel like there's no one to vote for.
What's the closest you've been to a alligator? Politicians? No, politicians are, you can't trust them.
This is Money, Power, and Politics. Well, tonight, both sides are spinning after the ugliest national presidential debate in our history.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
It all started with no handshake and played out like an episode of Divorce Court.
She has tremendous hate in her heart.
And this debate, as uncomfortable as it may have been to watch, was also revealing for both sides as they head down the stretch. Let's start with what it tells us about Donald Trump. First, Trump is fighting like a man who has nothing to lose, and he threw the kitchen sink at the Clintons.
Bill Clinton was abusive to women. Hillary Clinton attacked those same women.
He lashed the Clintons the way his base wanted Republican leaders to fight them for years. And Trump's aggressive approach, while it may not help him win over the few remaining persuadable voters, in fact, it may turn them off, but it will fire up his supporters. And that appears to be a strategy. If he revs up his base, he could motivate more of them to vote than Clinton's base. And with that, the polls may be wrong, just as they were with Brexit in Britain and in Greece a while back, and in the United States not too long ago with the fall of Eric Cantor. And we've seen it time and time again. The polls aren't always reliable. So after this debate, with continuing fallout from the Trump tapes and the turmoil in the Republican Party, yeah, his poll numbers may continue to dip, but the excitement among his supporters may go through the roof. Again, because he's fighting like a man who has nothing to lose and saying things the GOP establishment would not say and what his supporters want to hear. And that could drive up Trump's turnout in ways the pollsters may not expect. But all that said, we still have one big wild card with the Trump tapes and how Trump pushed back.
You bragged that you have sexually assaulted women. Do you understand that?
No, I didn't say that at all. I don't think you understood what was said.
Well, 11 years ago, Trump did in fact say that he made moves on women, kissing and groping them without their consent. And even Trump surrogate Rudy Giuliani says that is a description of sexual assault.
What Trump is describing in that tape is sexual assault.
That's what he's talking about.
And that's where Trump kept this one going by denying that kissing or groping without consent is describing assault.
You bragged that you have sexually assaulted women. Do you understand that?
No, I didn't say that at all. I don't think you understood what was said.
So that will continue to dog Donald Trump throughout the week. But the Republican leaders who are turning on him over it will not take him down by themselves.
I'm out. I can no longer, in good conscience, endorse this person for president.
In fact, Trump took off in the primaries by running against the establishment, and he's firing up his base once again by running against the GOP establishment. Paul Ryan's decision to stop appearing with Trump may help Trump, and Ryan and Trump both know that. Now, on to Clinton, because the debate also revealed a thing or two about her. In particular, she did not handle having the kitchen sink thrown at her particularly well. She was on her heels on defense for much of the night, and while she got under Trump's skin in the first debate, he got under her skin in round two. And it showed when she lost her patience on the same night she said, when they go low, she goes high.
Okay, Donald, I know you're into big diversion tonight, anything to avoid talking about your campaign and the way it's exploding and the way Republicans are leaving you.
And as they both ripped into each other in the first 30 minutes, they missed an opportunity to connect with voters on the big issues like stagnant wages and jobs. And that's what voters here in Florida are really thinking about. Take a look back at Charlie LaDuff's trip along the I-4 corridor.
The I-4 corridor, one of the fastest growing, most diverse swaths in America. Here, it's all about jobs.
This country is not a country anymore, it's a business, you know, and everybody's on the chopping block because
you agree with that?
Well, yeah, I do. I think that a lot of us are just kind of operating out of fear in this election cycle, just trying to figure out who's not going to make the worst decisions for us, right?
Exactly.
Disney created the town of Celebration from scratch. After the real estate collapse, this realtor now pitches the American dream to foreigners.
And so right now at 3.5% to 4%, it's free money. So why wouldn't you? If you could go out and buy a home right now, why wouldn't you go out and buy a home?
Free money's a realtor's friend.
Absolutely.
Go out to be American and spend it.
Absolutely.
The other side of the freeway is home to the Puerto Ricans who mop Disney's toilets and mow Celebration's lawns. They're a different kind of Latino. They're American citizens. He says there's no work in Puerto Rico and little work here. He shares room at this motel with another man for $1,000 a month. There's nothing left over to help his family. He says the pressure's great to perform. Last election, he voted Obama. This time, he says, maybe Trump, because he's a businessman.
What's the closest you've been to a alligator?
Politician?
No, politicians you can't trust them. These you can trust somewhat.
Hello, man, and we're coming up back here.
Hey, run these ways.
Anything for a story, I suppose. Go on, Mark. Easy peasy squeezy. This place blew my mind. 50,000 senior citizens living behind the gates. A Viagra Valhalla. They vote conservative here, but every night is like Woodstock. Just a couple miles down the road, they're also drinking beer. A few come here asking for votes.
They don't really care about this corner. They really care about what's going on with them. You know, it's just like the rich man care about the rich man, and the poor man really care about the poor man. Really, we don't really, you know, they don't care really about the poor people. But don't nothing goes on here.
Central Florida also puts strawberries on your breakfast table. And you know what that means.
Well, it'd be nice if the Americans right here would come out here and do the job I need done. But if I can't get Americans here to do this job, I need a means to bring in people from another country that want to come do this job. And I'm not for sending all the ones back that has been in this country for 40 years. And just because they're here illegally, yeah, they broke the law, ain't we all?
On the outskirts of Tampa, right off MLK Boulevard, you're greeted by the world's largest Confederate flag. You're reminded this is still the Deep South, and some things die hard.
We feel in Florida threatened.
The white Southern man's on the run in Florida?
No, we're not on the run. We're in the closet sometimes, but when they can have a chance to speak out, for example, this election that's coming up, we put that flag up to make sure that they understand that we're here and we want to be heard.
We'll have live results as they come in Tuesday night. We'll be right back.
And clear. 2 minutes back, Craig.
Dude, that's a trip. What did I just see?
That was Florida. That's Central Florida. And so goes Central Florida, so goes the state, so goes the nation.
Yeah, well, anyway, pick a winner, Florida. We're counting on you. Nice. Had a bald spot?
No.
Okay, man, talk. I thought I got sunburned. It's real nice down.
Coming up, how will this Republican rift play out and who may get the upper hand, Paul Ryan or Donald Trump? Plus, we'll show you how the new voter stats give us some hints about Florida. We've been calling out Trump and Clinton on the facts all day long, and here's a couple more examples, starting with Syria.
She was there as Secretary of State with the so-called line in the sand, which...
No, I wasn't. I was gone.
No, she wasn't. Hillary Clinton was still Secretary of State in 2012 when President Obama drew his line in the sand over chemical weapons, which he later reversed.
A red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around.
Meanwhile, Trump crossed the line when he claimed he did not bring up a sex tape in his tit-for-tat with the former beauty queen Alicia Machado.
Sent out a series of tweets from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m., including one that told people to check out his sex tape. Is that the discipline of good leader?
No, there wasn't check out a sex tape.
Yes, there was. He tweeted, check out sex tape, and passed. Those are just a couple of examples. We have others, so please check out our YouTube channel for more fact checks on this and prior debates. Search for Craig Patrick's Money, Power, and Politics and click subscribe at the top of the page. You'll also find our investigations of government spending, our humor segments, and prior shows you may have missed. Well, whether Trump wins or loses in this, the Republican Party will be at a fork in the road. And the party itself has split at this point, to the point that dozens of well-known GOP leaders have rejected Trump or urged him to flat out quit. And now we have this rift between the Republican nominee and the House Speaker. Well, Paul Ryan says he's not rescinding his endorsement in this, but he is shunning Trump. He won't defend him, won't be seen with him. Something is going to have to give here. And in this push and pull between those two, Trump currently has the upper hand with GOP voters. For example, in the last YouGov poll, Ryan's favorability checked in at plus 16. Trump's checked in at plus 36. In other words, Trump is more popular among Republicans than Paul Ryan. So one way or the other, change is coming. And speaking of change, Evan Axelbank has been all over change in Florida throughout the day today as it relates to voter registration. And you have Governor Scott called out by a federal judge who says it's poppycock that it's politics to extend the deadline. With this, it's a setback for Rick Scott and some big changes for Florida.
Well, it is, and one of the reasons that these campaigns fight so hard over when the registration deadline is going to be, maybe the main reason, is because these elections are just so darn close in Florida. 3 of the last 4 elections were decided by 3 points or less. So you're fighting on the margins here, and if a political party thinks that they can extend the deadline for even one day and maybe get an advantage of 3 or 4 or 5,000 voters, that can literally be the difference with how important Florida is and who leads the free world.
In a state that decided a national election by some 500 plus votes. So Governor Scott is saying that he did not want to extend the deadline. He says it's about politics. If you look at the trends in the past, yes, more Democrats and Democratic leaners do tend to register closer to the deadline than do Republicans. At this point, though, Evan, what are you seeing in those voter registration numbers? You've been all over this today. Which party seems to have the upper hand?
Well, the key here is that if you look at the statewide number, the Republican Party believes, or they do believe, they do have an advantage of several 100,000 voters, at least that's how much they've closed the gap. The Democrats have had the advantage. They do have the advantage. Republicans have closed that gap to several hundred or by several 100,000 over the last year. So the gap is smaller. Democrats still lead. But what Democrats say is that the Republicans have really not done that. If you look at who's voting, what they believe is that the voters who have gone to the Republican Party are ones who wanted to vote in the primary and that they'd already been voting for Republicans over the last several elections. They believe they're older voters coming from North Florida, so they don't think that the number that matters is the statewide number. What they're looking at are minority voters. 63% of new voters in Florida are minority, and they believe they have a 2-to-1 advantage.
Democrats are revving up. So are the Republicans. Trump is coming back to town, to the state this week. So is Bill Clinton. And that's going to be fascinating, is it not?
Right. Well, and he's going to have maybe some things to say about the way Donald Trump ran the debate, the way Donald Trump brought in some of Bill Clinton's former, I don't know what the word would be, but some folks
accusers,
he was involved with him or allegedly involved with him. So the president, former president, may have some things to say about that. That's going to be very interesting. He's doing a Get Out the Vote rally in Clearwater tomorrow night.
Evan, thank you so much for your time. In the meantime, we're a long way from finished. We're going to continue to dig into the fallout from last night.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Okay, please welcome Lily Adams, senior strategist for the Clinton campaign. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
On former President Clinton's choice of words, does the Clinton campaign wish that President Clinton would not have called the federal health care reform system crazy?
Well, I think that what President Clinton said in the days following is that it is no secret that he is opposed to any attempts that Republicans have, now we've seen 60 of, to try to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Does he think that there can be changes? Absolutely. Does Secretary Clinton and Tim Kaine think there can be changes? Of course. It can always be made better. But, you know, those aren't the words that maybe I would have chosen, but I think that he made his position clear on what he was saying. I think what's truly offensive is that Donald Trump and Mike Pence want to repeal the Affordable Care Act that's now covering millions of people across the country and would take us back to square one where insurance companies were running the show. That's their plan. So I would certainly rather build on what we have, build on the progress that we've made, and so would Hillary Clinton.
And specifically, how do you get there? How do you stop this system that's driving up premiums and cutting down options if she had Congress to go along with her?
Well, I think one of the things that has to be done, first and foremost, is making sure that we stop all these attempts to try to repeal the Affordable Care Act. I think there are ways that she's laid out specifically, and again, this is a policy wonk. Hillary Clinton, I think, has laid out numerous policies to increase subsidies for folks who are right on the margins. So this is something that she's talked much about. As you know, in the 1990s, she tried to get healthcare reform done early. And so this is something that she'll continue to work with folks on both sides of the aisle who are willing and able to try to make progress on. Lower the cost of prescription drugs, lower the cost of premiums.
And of course, Secretary's been dogged by email controversies, and she said her approach to email, of course, was a mistake. But what do you see in the Secretary that drove her to make that kind of mistake in the first place? And how do you know, knowing her as you do, that she would not make a similar mistake in the future?
Well, I think Hillary Clinton has been very clear that she would, as you said, she made a mistake and regrets it, certainly would not make the same mistake again. And this is somebody who has had a long career with many different jobs, and I think just like any of us, has made mistakes and learns from them. So I think she's someone that rarely ever repeats the same mistake. And so I think that she has continued to answer questions that come up. But again, she's released 55,000 pages of emails. The FBI concluded that there was no need and no case to move forward with in this case. And so I think that, while the Republicans will continue to harp on this issue, for most of the American people, they're concerned on, who's going to raise wages in this country, who's going to create more jobs, who's going to create a better education system. And that's what she's focused on as well.
Lily, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much.
Coming up, we'll show you the new election forecast for the White House and Congress. Okay, we have some changes to talk about in the election forecast. Let's start with Dr. Larry Sabato and his crystal ball. Look at this. He has moved 7 different states over the past few days, largely in Hillary Clinton's column with this. His forecast has her with a stranglehold in the Electoral College with 341 electoral votes with 270 needed. He's giving her a 70 to 75% chance at this point of winning. 538.com moves it up to 80% plus. Clinton at this point has clearly consolidated her gains with a 5+ point lead and an average of national polls. That gives her a substantial advantage in the Electoral College. Very briefly, if you look at the Senate map here, what you have is really a deadlock race. Democrats 47, Republicans 47. Those states in yellow will ultimately decide which party controls the upper chamber, controls the U.S. Senate. Of course, we will continue to track the races in the race to the White House and the Senate and House calls as well coming later this week. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of Money, Power, and Politics. We will see you once more tomorrow night. Take care.